The Callen Station incident file arrived on Setharova's desk at 6:40 on a Tuesday, which was when files arrived when nobody wanted to be the one to deliver them in person. He had been in the Crisis Response Archive Division for 11 years. He had reviewed 43 negotiation transcripts. He had a system, read the outcome summary first, then the timeline, then the methodology section, then the transcript itself if the methodology raised flags. The system existed because the transcript was always the longest part and was almost never where the answer was. In 43 cases, it had never been where the answer was. He read the outcome summary. He read it again. 237 hostages, 18-hour operational window, resolution without casualties. He moved to the timeline. He moved to the methodology section. He read 3 lines, stopped, and went directly to the transcript. He was still reading it 2 hours later when his junior analyst, Peth, put a refilled cup of something warm at his elbow without being asked. He did not look up. His inner eyes were moving fast across the text, and his outer eyes had gone completely still, which Peth had learned in 8 months of working for Seth meant, do not speak to him right now. He read the transcript twice. He opened the monitoring footage. He watched it 3 times. Then he opened his assessment template and sat with his hands over the input surface for a long moment, his wide mouth compressed to a line, and began to write. The manifest came through at 4:02. Kaath Devren had been awake for 22 hours by then, which was standard. He had planned for 22 hours and had plans for 22 more. The operations center of Callen Station's central hub was his now. The station's own control staff confined to the secondary monitoring room under guard. The hostages distributed through the transit ring in 3 groups, with his people running a rotation he had designed specifically to maintain readiness without degrading it. He had thought of everything. 8 months of thinking about everything. He read the manifest. The Coalition's Crisis Response Division had transmitted it ahead of docking authorization, as the protocol required. He had studied the protocol. He knew it backward. He had expected a senior diplomatic designate, rank equivalent to deputy ambassador at minimum, the specific grade of person whose presence was a statement about institutional seriousness. He had designed the demands to require exactly this. The Hasser Belt dispute had been ignored for 20 years because the Vreth were not serious enough to demand serious attention. He had rectified that. He read the manifest again. Venn, Rosa, Coalition Civil Dispute Division, Tier 2, Regional Mediator, Field Certification, Current, Security Clearance, Standard, Diplomatic Rank, None. He read it a 3rd time with the specific quality of attention he gave to things that did not make sense. Sura appeared at his shoulder. She was 29, compact, with the efficient stillness of someone who had been trained to read rooms fast. What's wrong? He showed her the manifest. She read it once. Tier 2, she said. Tier 2. They sent a Tier 2. He pulled up the supporting documentation, the credentials package the protocol required. He found the field record. He read it once and then sat looking at it for a moment that went slightly longer than he intended, because 41 resolutions was not a number that belonged in a Tier 2 field record. It was not a number that belonged in most senior diplomatic records. He had reviewed the Coalition's top 5 negotiators. He had made a study of them, and none of them had 41 for 41. He did not have a category for 41 for 41. The cargo manifest, Sura said. He had almost missed it. Environmental sensors had flagged the thermal signature, a contained heat source in the personal baggage category, logged at the shuttle's departure point. He pulled it up. Personal item, category, food, description, covered casserole dish. Contents, unknown. He read this. He read it again. They sent us a woman with a casserole, he said. Sura's expression moved through several distinct positions quickly, in the way of someone whose assessment process was faster than her conclusions. It might be a trap. What kind of trap, he said, involves a casserole dish? Neither of them had an answer. He sat with the manifest and the record and the cargo listing and the specific unease of a man who had planned for everything and was looking at something he had not planned for. The unease had no name. It was not fear. He had arranged himself past fear 8 months ago, deliberately, because fear was not useful. It was something else. The shape of something he could not see. He authorized the docking. He did not know why he authorized the docking. He told himself it was because turning her away would cost him more politically than admitting her. The coalition would document the refusal, use it, and he had not done this to hand them easy documentation. He told himself this and filed it, and was aware at some level that it was not the whole truth. She came off the shuttle with a canvas bag over one shoulder, a covered dish under the opposite arm, and a gray cardigan that had seen a significant number of transit postings. 4 of his people were at the lock. She looked at them, not up at them, not in the guarded way of someone assessing threat, but in the level-specific way of someone doing a quiet internal accounting that had arrived, apparently, at workable. "Hello," she said, and then, "Is there somewhere I can put this where it'll stay warm? There's about an hour left in it, and I'd rather not waste it." The guard on the left looked at the guard on the right. Kaath watched this from the monitoring feed. He watched his people, who had trained for this moment, and who were prepared for every coalition response this scenario could produce, fail to have a protocol for the question. "There's a commissary," the right guard said finally. "Wonderful," Rosa Venn said. "Can someone show me?" They showed her. Kaath watched this on the feed and was aware of the specific quality of his jaw. The set that Vreth read is preparation, that he had been carrying for 22 hours, and did not know what to do with the fact that it was still there. The negotiating table was in the hub's secondary conference room, which had a window onto the lower transit ring. He had chosen it deliberately. He wanted the hostages visible, wanted the weight of their presence in the room. He had chosen the table positioning and the lighting and the chair arrangement. He had, as he had told Sura, thought of everything. Rosa Venn set her bag down, put her cardigan on the back of her chair, and sat. She had a notepad, actual paper which he had not expected, and a pen in the recording unit required by protocol. She looked at the table arrangement and then at him with the expression of someone making an assessment that she was not going to share immediately. He laid out the demands. He had done this in his head 100 times. He was precise and specific and well prepared. Territorial recognition, arbitration withdrawal, coalition acknowledgement of the Hasser Belt claim. He covered the ground cleanly. He made the timeline clear. He did not leave room for misunderstanding because he had learned over 20 years that misunderstanding was a tool institutions used to run out the clock on people they did not want to hear. Rosa listened without interrupting. This he had expected. Then she said, "I read the Hasser Belt file. The 2041 arbitration board suppressed 3 pieces of Vreth survey data that would have altered the outcome. You've been right about the timeline since the beginning, and the arbitration record knows it." He stopped. He had prepared for denial. He had prepared for the coalition to contest the legitimacy of the claims, to question the evidence, to deploy the specific language of institutional neutrality that meant nothing would change. He had wargamed every version of the opening denial and had responses ready for all of them. He had not prepared for this. "Then why," he said, "has nothing changed?" "That," Rosa Venn said, "is what I'm here to find out." His jaw set. His exit calculations, the conversational paths back to the framework he knew, began to run. She was watching him with an expression he did not have a category for, patient in a way that was not tactical patience, the specific patience of someone who had decided that this conversation was worth whatever it took. She waited. By hour 4, something was wrong. He knew what was wrong. He could not fix it. He had returned to the demands 7 times. Each time, Rosa Venn had acknowledged them, not dismissed them, not countered them, acknowledged them, as if they were real things that deserved a real response, and then asked a question that was not about the demands. The questions were specific and unhurried, and she wrote down the answers, not in the shorthand of someone documenting positions, but in the slower, denser way of someone documenting something else entirely. He did not know what she was writing down. He did not know how to ask without conceding that he had noticed. "When," she asked at hour 4, "did you stop believing this was going to be resolved any other way?" The question landed somewhere he had not been expecting anything to land. His hands were closed on the table. He was aware of them. He kept them still. He had been ready for the coalition to question his methods. He had been ready for them to question his judgment, his tactics, his choice of target, his demands, his timeline. He had not been ready for someone to ask him something true and wait to hear the answer. He answered it. He did not mean to. He began to answer it in the measured, political register he had prepared, the grievances of the Vreth people, the 20 years of moderate faction promises, the structural bias of the arbitration system, and somewhere in the middle of it the register shifted, and he was talking about 2041 and his father, and the specific moment when he had understood that the hearing was never going to go the way the evidence said it should go, and that the people running it knew this and had decided that the Vreth claim was not worth the political cost of the correct outcome. He talked for a long time. Rosa Venn did not interrupt him. In the monitoring room, Sura wrote in her internal report, "She's not writing down what he's saying. She's writing down something else. I don't know what." Hour 6, Rosa opened her bag and took out the casserole dish. He watched her cross to the commissary alcove at the room's far end. She had apparently identified it during the preparatory walk-in, which he noted, and return with the dish warm and 2 sets of the station's standard-issue utensils. She put one set in front of him. She opened the dish. The smell of it filled the conference room in the specific way that smells did when they were attached to something deep in the memory. Warm, savory, the particular domestic register of a thing made by hand in a kitchen. "My mother made this," Rosa said, sitting down. "I've been making it for 20 years. Lamb and root vegetables. The root vegetables are the important part. They take the cooking time. Their shadows stretching about in the smell of it on a cold station that makes everything seem slightly more manageable." He looked at the utensils she had put in front of him. He looked at her. "This," he said, "is not a social visit." "I know," Rosa said. She served herself. She began to eat. He was aware of the absurdity of it. 237 hostages in his transit ring, a coalition security team on standby somewhere in the corridor, the highest stakes operation of his life, and a woman eating lamb stew at the negotiating table. He was aware of the absurdity, and he was also aware that he had not eaten in 14 hours, and the smell was not helping. He did not touch the utensils. He watched her eat with the expression of a man trying to find the tactical dimension of a casserole and not finding it. Rosa ate without apparent awareness that she had done anything unusual. She said at some point, "The survey data from 2041 was that your father's team." He said, "Yes." She said, "I thought so." The methodology was his, from the 2034 paper. She said this the way she said everything, without emphasis, without a hook in it, just a thing she knew that she was saying because it was true and relevant. She asked him about the survey. He told her. She listened and made notes and asked another question, and he answered it. He did not pick up the utensils until hour 10. In the monitoring room, Sura's hour 10 report read, "He is talking about his father." She sat with that for a moment. Then she wrote, "I don't know what she did." Hour 12. Perrin's second comm came through to Rosa's field unit, which she had kept on the table throughout, visible, not hidden, a choice he had noticed and not known what to do with. "Status," Perrin said. "It's going," Rosa said. "I need more than that." "He just told me something true," she said. "Get me 6 more hours." There was a pause. "Copy that," Perrin said, standing down the response team. The comm closed. Kaath looked at her. She looked back at him with the expression of someone who was waiting to see what he would do with that, and he was aware that what she had done was put the information in the room deliberately. The response team was there, was real, and she had made them visible and then told him she had asked them to wait. It was not a threat. It was something else. It was the specific act of someone who had decided that he was owed the truth about the situation he was in. His hands were open on the table. He did not know when that had happened. "My father filed the survey," he said, "not because it followed from anything, because it was still there, still unfinished. He spent 4 years on that data. He testified at the 2041 hearing. He stopped. He was not a political man. He was a scientist. He thought the data would be enough." Rosa was very still. "It took him a long time," Kaath said, "to understand that the data was never what it was going to be about." Rosa said, "How long did it take you?" He looked at the table. He looked at his open hands. "I was 12, he said. "I watched him understand it. I was faster." The shape of the settlement became clear in hour 15, not because Rosa presented it, but because it had been building for 11 hours, and it was finally visible. She laid it out plainly, Formal coalition review of the Saucer Belt dispute timeline with Vreth representation in the process. Public acknowledgement from the coalition that the arbitration structure as currently implemented creates structural disadvantages for smaller claimants. No territorial recognition. She did not have the authority to grant it, and she said this without apology, the way she said everything real. No arbitration withdrawal. He looked at it. "It's not what you asked for," she said. "No, I know." He looked at the gap. He had been looking at it for 8 months, the gap between what was real and what he had come here to demand, and the question of which one mattered more. He had decided 8 months ago that the demand mattered more, because the demand was the thing that would be taken seriously. And being taken seriously was the only leverage he had ever had that was real. "It's not enough," he said. "I know." A pause. "But it's true. And true things hold." He was quiet for a long time. His hands were still open. He said he needed to speak with his people. Rosa refilled her coffee. The commissary's third visit, he had lost count and waited. The handoff happened at 2147 station time. The coalition security team came through the hub access in formation by the book, with the specific contained efficiency of people who had been standing by for 18 hours and were very ready to not be standing by. The transit ring was cleared in 22 minutes. 237 hostages, no casualties. Kaath stood at the conference room table and watched this on the monitoring feed and was aware of the specific quality of standing in a place after you have done the thing that cannot be undone, have decided that you stand in it anyway. He had known, going in, what the other side of this looked like. He had made his peace with it. He thought he had. Rosa stayed in the room. She did not have to. He was aware that she did not have to. She was standing near the window with her cardigan on and her bag over her shoulder and the empty casserole dish in her hands, and she was not performing waiting. She was just there, present, in the way she had been present for 18 hours, with the specific quality of someone who had decided that this conversation was not over until it was over. The security team lead crossed to him. He looked before he moved across the room. Rosa was already looking at him. She held his eyes for a moment. Not absolution, not sympathy, not the diplomatic register of an institutional representative completing a transaction. The acknowledgement of a person who had sat in a room with him for 18 hours and knew the full weight of every hour and was not leaving before he did. She nodded. He nodded back. The security team moved. Rosa picked up her things and walked out of the room. She did not look back. The door closed. The conference room held the smell of cold coffee and, faintly, lamb and root vegetables. Seth had been sitting with the monitoring footage of the nod for 11 minutes, which he became aware of when Peth appeared at the edge of his desk with an expression of professional concern. "I'm fine," he said, which was true in all the ways that mattered. He closed the footage window and looked at his assessment. The official sections were complete. Clean, accurate, the competent analyst's record of a competent crisis resolution. He had written the timeline section, and the casualty section, and the resource utilization section, and the outcome section, with the steady efficiency of someone who had done this 43 times and knew the form. He had gotten to the methodology section and had written 3 sentences in the official register before stopping. He deleted the 3 sentences. He tried again. He wrote, "Subject then employed a non-standard approach to the negotiation that declined the crisis framework in favor of." He stopped. In favor of what? He knew the named methods. He knew mirroring and strategic empathy deployment, and principled negotiation and interest-based bargaining, and the 9 other methodologies in the classified curriculum. He had read the Callen transcript looking for each of them in sequence. He had not found any of them. He had found a woman eating lamb stew at a hostage negotiation. He had found a woman who told a man with 237 hostages that he was right about several things, and then named specifically which ones. He had found 43 hours of transcript that read, in places, less like a negotiation and more like a conversation between 2 people who had decided at some point in the proceedings to be honest with each other. He wrote, "Subject appears to have approached the crisis as a human problem rather than a political one. Outcome resolved. Methodology, currently unclassifiable. Recommend further study." He submitted the official assessment. He opened the informal notes field. He put his hands over the input surface. His outer eyes went still, his mouth compressed. He sat like this for longer than he had ever sat over an informal notes field. Path, from across the division, did not speak to him. He wrote, "The transcript does not record a single instance of Subject Venn deploying any classified negotiation technique. The transcript records 41 direct questions, none of which were from the standard question bank. The transcript records 2 meals." Seth paused. He wrote, "Kaath Devren's hands are closed in all footage until hour 12, at which point they are open, and there is no footage of the transition. I have watched the available footage 3 times and cannot identify the moment. I believe this is because there was no moment. I believe it was continuous." He paused again. He wrote, "She brought a casserole. I don't know what that means." He looked at this. He thought about 41 deployments. He thought about a man whose father spent 4 years on survey data and testified at a hearing that had already decided its outcome, and a woman who knew the survey methodology from the paper the father had published before the hearing. He thought about the specific act of knowing a thing and saying it plainly to a person who had spent 20 years not being known. He wrote, "I think it means something." He submitted the field. He closed the terminal. The analysis division was quiet around him, the ordinary quiet of an institution doing its ordinary work, files moving through their ordinary channels. 43 resolved crises filed in their correct locations. He sat in the quiet for a moment. He thought about Rosa Venn going to the commissary 3 times in 18 hours, finding it on the preparatory walk-in, asking an armed guard for directions. He thought about what it meant to be simply and entirely a person in a room where everyone expected you to be something else. He thought about the specific leverage of that, not as a tactic, not as a method, as a disposition, as the thing you were before the room got hold of you. He opened a new document, blank, unformatted. He typed, "Proposal for new framework category, negotiation via." He stopped. He did not have the word for what came next. He looked at the blank space after the dash. He thought about Kaath Devren's hands, open on a table, and an empty casserole dish, and a settlement that nobody fully liked and that would, by his assessment, hold. He saved the document without a title. He went to find coffee. He thought as he walked that he understood now why she'd brought one.